what you said was really interesting because yes, we have so many OLF leaders in prison right now, and as Ilila mentioned, I believe it was Ilila who mentioned this, that there, the photo with Dawood Ibsa is used as evidence, yet it's Jawar who is facing the charges for this, right? Why is that? Because we have seen all these photos of Jawar with a crowd of how many countless people. And as many of you have pointed out, he was, most likely Abi's, most formidable opponent. And I think that, the fact that, okay, so he is taking photos with these other people, yet he's the one being charged with these crimes. And it just makes you really, like, if you break it down that way, you cannot avoid the fact that this is political.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for raising such excellent points. And thank you, Kolana Emirato, for honing in on the fact that this is, a ploy for Abi to clear the path of any political opposition that, could pose a threat to his power and his rule. And I don't really have anything to add to all of the excellent points that you guys have already made, other than perhaps summarizing them by saying that when telling the truth and highlighting the reality on the ground, reflecting true historical accounts, embracing your Oromoma, can all be construed as inciting hatred and violence. In such situations, justice has already been precluded. Justice cannot be served in that type of situation. So this being a real trial, I think it's been clearly established that cannot possibly be the case. And it is absolutely just a show trial that, as you guys have mentioned, is means for the current government to just remove political opposition. But the problem with this as well is there is an issue that we do want to seek real justice for, that is being overshadowed by the show trial. The issue of Hatem's murder that has still not been properly addressed. Justice has not been brought about for Hatem and his family, and for the wider Oromo nation. And so what are your thoughts around what's being done or lack thereof in terms of bringing about justice for the murder of Hatem?
I can start off. I think that the first point I want to make is that this week, as we know in the United States, we know that there has been a large outcry against the lack of justice for the murder of Breonna Taylor. And I've been thinking a lot about that and what that means in terms of the legal system in America, the criminal justice system in America, in the context of the fact that there has been no justice served for Haj Alu's murder. And maybe people will say, well, it's very naive to expect Ethiopia's criminal justice system to serve justice, given how there's just political show trials happening, that's really what's taking the stage. But I still think a lot of people expected something besides the claim that somehow OLF is behind Haj Alu's murder, which absolutely nobody who understands the politics of that country believes. Or it just sounds bizarre, really, because that is not, or Ola, that's just not a practice of that political entity. They don't participate in that kind of activity. And so there really has been no evidence presented publicly, or nothing really discussed from the administration about Haj Alu's murder for months now. And in the case of Breonna Taylor, we know that the charges that were filed were in regards to bullets that went into a neighbor's home that did not harm anyone. And I just keep thinking about the parallels of this and how, like, who you are in a society, your identity, you know, being Black in America or being Oromo in the Ethiopian Empire, it means that if your life is taken, I mean, there is a chance that you will never have justice, or there will never be accountability for that, because your life is not valued by that system. I mean, that is what we are really being shown here, is that, you know, we are still mourning Hachalu. I mean, every 30 days, every 100 days, I mean, we will forevermore mourn him. You know, regardless of whether there's accountability or not, we'll mourn him. But it really it hurts more deeply to know that that system will never, ever be interested in revealing the truth or investigating the truth about how he was murdered, who murdered him. And it's just really devastating. And it just shows once more that there really is a lack of confidence and legitimacy in the system.
I think one thing too that's you know, mentioned a lot is, okay, well, or, you know, for example, even in the charges, it says that one of the accusations is that Jawar and the others have stated that Neftanya's are responsible for Hachalu's murder. And I think there's a lot of people that, you know, hold the government responsible as well, especially in the absence of an actual investigation that is legitimate, transparent, or independent in any way. But I think, for me at least, you know, looking at this situation, whether it was, you know, actually an action that was, you know, in any way directed, directly or indirectly, by the government or Abiy's, you know, regime, the way that things were handled in the aftermath shows that the government cannot be expected to really achieve any actual investigation or accountability for this, whether or not they had a direct hand in it or not, because of the level of disrespect that was shown for Hachalu, for his body, for the, you know, the memorial, for anything really after that. I think just shows the level of disrespect.
Yeah, I agree with both Marartu and Kulini. If I may add one thing, like Kulini said, we hardly hear about what steps the government is taking to investigate his assassination, since, like, you know, a couple of days after it happened, and the AG at the time, Adani Chabebe, came out and gave a statement. I might have missed out on some things, but from what I know, there has been little information after that statement. We don't know when the trial is going to happen. We don't know if his family is going to get justice, the Oromo people are going to get justice, because Hachalu's death did not just only impact his family, it greatly impacted his family, but it also impacted the whole Oromo nation. And Oromo nation lost a voice, a prominent voice that spoke of the pain that we had as a people. So we are all invested in getting justice for Hachalu. And lately, we don't hear anything about where you know, where the trial is going, whether his family is going to receive justice, or whether Oromo people are going to get justice. The only thing that we are getting, unfortunately and sadly, is that his assassination is being used as an instrument to accuse prominent Oromo political leaders and 21 others. One of the evidence presented by the prosecutor is actually a picture of Hachalu carrying a gun. Apparently, they said they found a picture of Hachalu carrying a rifle or a gun. I don't remember exactly, but a weapon. And it's actually now in connection with the trial against Jawar Bakala and the 22 Hamza Borana and the 21 others that we are hearing about Hachalu. Up until now, there hasn't been anything, any information with regards to what's going to happen. So this tells me, at least, that the judicial system in Ethiopia is not impartial and independent. It is completely hijacked by the executive, and the executive gives directives on how the judicial system is going to function when it comes to which trials should go first or which trials should go forward. And it is expedient for the government right now, or it is purposeful for the government right now, that they use their time and their energy and their resources to criminalize and to convict prominent opposition leaders than to investigate the assassination of Hachalu and have a trial so that his family can receive justice and the Oromo people can receive justice.
Yeah, I think sorry. I was just gonna say, I think one of the most regrettable things is the impact that this has had on Hachalu's legacy. I mean, I think for a lot of us who, really found him and his, work and, his words to be so impactful for us, that doesn't, that's not affected. But just on the larger scale, he's really been used as a pawn in a lot of this, and it's really unfortunate. And I think, recently I've just been reflecting on pretty much any international media source, BBC, Al Jazeera, whatever it may be. Whenever they are talking about the conflicts going on in Oromia and Ethiopia right now, it always starts with, the murdered pop star or a slain pop star, and then that triggered an uprising. And it's really unfortunate, not only for Hachalu's legacy, because it makes it seem like this was some sort of, pop culture thing that, really angered people and caused a lot of violence on the one hand. And then on the other hand, it reduces the Oromo struggle and the long-standing issues in that country to something that just occurred because of this assassination. When really the reality is that this, obviously there was the large Oromo protest movement before that triggered reforms, and then those quickly went downhill, and they've been worsening over the past couple of years. And that was kind of a tipping point. And I think that, unfortunately, just the way that things have played out, a large part because of what the actions of Abiy and the government has really portrayed this in a way that does not align with the reality in terms of the international picture.
Thank you, Maratu. I really appreciate you making the point that international media coverage has sometimes worked to undermine what is the legacy of Hachalu Hundesa's life, which was fighting for the freedom from oppression of the Oromo people. And that definitely needs to be brought more to the forefront of how this issue is reported on, and that the Oromo struggle is centralized as something that is a historical issue that is only getting worse and worse by the day in the current situation that we're in. And I think it's also worth mentioning the words from the UN Human Rights Commission, I believe it was, in terms of supporting the Ethiopian government in carrying out an independent investigation into the death of or the murder of Hachalu. And the fact that even within that sentence, the things that were said don't align. Because how is the government that has been implicated in his murder going to carry out an independent investigation on what it is believed to have done? And so what do you guys make of this UN Human Rights Commission's approach to support the Ethiopian government in carrying out an independent investigation, rather than advocating for an independent investigation through some other means or some other capacity?
I'll just say really briefly, I think it's really unfortunate, because I think, as we've kind of pointed out, the current climate and situation, the context does not allow for any independent investigation, because that is antithetical to this government's mode of operation. But it's unfortunate that the UN rights body has essentially given a stamp of approval, because they're not going to, assuming that they're just saying they're supporting, perhaps by providing resources, not exactly sure what that support entails, but they're essentially co-signing onto this investigation and giving it legitimacy. And I think that's really unfortunate, especially considering the larger context. And irresponsible, honestly.
I mean, I would love to know what their considerations were when they decided to suggest that the Ethiopian government is capable of running an impartial or independent investigation. I mean, what's really telling is when you look at the charges against the 24 people, including Jawar, they include statements about how the defendants were critical of the Naftanya system or of Emperor Menelik. And if you look back at Hachalu's interview on OMN, I think the week before he was assassinated, I mean, those were like sort of the highlights of that interview. His like sort of strong stance against what the Menelik legacy stands for, which is the colonization and conquest of the Oromo and other nationalities. I mean, he was very adamant that he is critical of the settler system, the Naftanya system. And those kind of perspectives are currently being criminalized. And you can read in the charges how that's happening. But how can an international body not understand that and see how it's going to be difficult for this government to do an independent investigation, because it's criminalizing people currently for the things that Hachalu was probably murdered for. And so I just think it's just another example of really a lack in international bodies really stepping up to the plate. And I think it is an area in which the Oromo community in the diaspora can really apply pressure regarding, because I do think that there are tools in international law that we should be utilizing to not only apply pressure, but to sort of seek a solution out of this current mess. Because there are international obligations in terms of intervening in contexts and in countries that are headed to a civil war, that are perpetuating really severe, to prevent that from happening. And they really need to step up to the plate. And maybe we'll discuss this further in a bit, but that is one area that I think the Oromo protest movement from the diaspora angle can continue pushing.
Okay, actually, you've brought us quite nicely into the next point in terms of what's next for the Oromo protest movement. And you mentioned there, in terms of the Oromo protest movement, putting pressure on bodies like the UN Human Rights Commission to step up to the plate, like you said. But more broadly, in light of the considerations that we've been discussing here, what do you think should be the next steps for the Oromo protests movement?
I think, as Kuleni said, really applying pressure is one way that hopefully, or something like that, which essentially means pointing out the flaws in their system. They've essentially made that illegal. And so the extent to which free speech and dissent are criminalized in that country, I think that for those of us who are living in places where, you know, and I also think that we really need to think about ways to directly support the Qarree and Kaayyoo back home, and really figure out how we can do that in a more systematic and consistent way that meets their needs.
Like, be a solution for the struggle that we're in, because I think our struggle is going to be long. It's going to be long, and it's going to be demanding. But as Kuleni was saying, that one thing that we need to do, especially those of us in the diaspora, we need to advocate for our people, continue advocating. And if the country ever abided by these conventions before, but since the 29th of June, we are seeing that there is a complete disregard for human rights. There is a complete disregard for people's right when they are arbitrarily arrested, and or are detained. So we need to push citizens that it will not extrajudicially execute its citizens or any foreigners, that it would allow for it would facilitate for free speech. That has been something that has been lacking with, for example, with blocking access to internet. Ethiopia fulfills, the Ethiopian government fulfills its commitment, or like that it has made to the international community. Another thing is we have being a voice to Kaayyoo and Qarree, especially when they are being systematically silenced. I think right now the government does not want a made to say that the government will be illegitimate after the 5th of October will be met with violence is an attempt at silencing. So I think we have to repeat over and over again that this government will be legitimate on the 5th of October to the world.
I think I can just add on a little bit. I think you guys really covered how we in the diaspora need to be fit. I think will be sort of like a moment in which we realize the crisis can actually get worse. Because it's not only us here in the diaspora that's discussing how the system is not legitimate. People in the country are discussing that. I mean, it's you cannot silence a whole nation. It's just unbelievable. And the recent military statement from the general about how no one can speak on the issue or disagree with the issue that the government isn't legitimate really shows you that they actually are planning on escalating the violence if there is continued dissent. If there are continued protests or boycotts or whatever. I mean, they are already committing human rights abuses, but they are planning on escalating it if there is any critique or sort of anything that speaks violence, or, you know, they really should be right now intervening, to be honest, when you think about the hundreds of people that have been killed so far. And that thousands of people that are in prison, but it can actually get worse. And that's what I fear. And I think that's where the country is headed. And there is a need for the international community to intervene. And so to make that case clear, I think that we need to be organizing under our institutions. Lawyers should be getting together. There is a international Oromo law, and the messaging needs to be sharpened to say, to veer it towards not just only about what's happened in these past few months, but how literally there is no legitimate government in Ethiopia after October 5th. And I think that beyond that, communities need to be organizing streamlined. And so I think, let me just say, leave it on a positive note, I think that what we have been doing so far is good, that we have been the diaspora community has been applying pressure, but it's time to continue that and to think more strategically about how the international community needs to step up and how.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those remarks, Kulani. Thank you, Marita. Thank you, Alela. So I think closing on those points that you made, Kulani, it would be an excellent place to finish. Of the Gero and Qarree in Ethiopia, who, as we have discussed, are being criminalized for stating what is a reality, which is the upcoming illegitimacy of the current government, and speaking out about the fact that free and fair elections cannot go ahead as long as our political leaders are imprisoned on bogus and trumped up charges. So yeah, again, I'd just like to say thank you to the three of you for being here today. Thank you again to Oromo Protests, Kaayyoo Media, and Oromia News Network for hosting us. And I guess we'll finish on that. Thank you very much, everyone.